Driving through Port Orford on Highway 101, on the right side is this building. When I lived here back in 1978, 79, when I was in the Royal Rangers, it's a boys camping program with the Assemblies of God. That building was Walter's Landing, and I loved it. It was a sheep making production company. They would make clothing out of sheep wool, moccasins, cool hats, vests, gloves, and they had leather. It was a leather shop that made things. It was so neat, and I loved the smell, and I was attracted here. Howard and Jerry Walters served the community by making sheepskin things, and tourists oftentimes would buy them too as souvenirs. Well, I was particularly interested in it because through the Royal Rangers, I joined a particular movement called the FCF, Frontier Camping Fraternity. And it was used to reach out to boys between 14 and 18 with the 1820s and 30s buckskinners, mountain men motif. And we used that to draw those boys and keep them for Christ a little bit longer, where we could disciple and reach them, using that as a tool. And the kids loved it. Tomahawk knife throwing, black powder shooting, I did it all. But one thing I needed in 1978, when I was inducted to the Frontier Camping Fraternity and got the name Little Bear, was I needed buckskins, and I wanted to make an Indian outfit. And I didn't have the leather. I was poor as dirt. We lived in this town from hand to mouth, and I just didn't know how I could buy leather. Leather's expensive when you don't have money. And so I went in there and hem and hawed, and they knew I was looking for leather, and they didn't come right up and go, "Oh, Little Bear, we love you so much. We're going to give you, like $300 to $400 worth of leather to make an entire outfit." So, but as they were talking one day, they go, "Oh, we'd like to get this building painted someday," and because I spent a lot of time with them, and the light bulb went on. A building painted. I used to have a roofing and painting company, Maranatha Roofing in Southern California. I can paint your building, and why don't we do a deal like where I can trade my labor to paint that 3-story building right there, and you can give me the leather. Man, they knew a sucker when a sucker was born, and I was the sucker. They go, "Absolutely, we'll give you the leather if you'll paint our building." I was so young and dumb, 30 years old and desperate with no money. You do desperate things when you don't have money. So I went to the local high school, Pacific High School, and I borrowed their scaffolding, and I set it up, and I began to paint. They provided all the paint. All they needed was the sucker to climb up 3 stories and break his neck. And I really have never painted a 3-story building where that eave is 3 stories. I've painted a 2-story apartment house, but not a 3-story. And it was spooky. I really shouldn't have been scared. As a roofer, you're hanging off 3-story roofs. Most of the time it's 2-story, but you're shingling right up at the edge. But I just not real comfortable close to heights and close to edges of like scaffolding. They're so narrow. But I was desperate enough that I painted, and I whistled a happy tune and sang Christian songs, and I was so excited the Lord was giving me my leather, and I worked diligently. Like for 7 days I worked painting the entire perimeter from the very top shingles to the very base, and it was done. And they gave me 2 shades of leather, and I made my Indian outfit. And then I did all my beadwork on looms. It took me 3 months to make that outfit, and oh man, it is beautiful. And I traveled all over America as Little Bear, and I did hundreds and hundreds of young children camps, Royal Ranger camps, homeschool conferences, church ministry, using that outfit as a tool to get into a place where normally, just as a regular person wearing regular clothing, I may not have had the opportunity. And so that work paid off. And what it teaches you is we should never be intimidated that we can't do something, because the Bible says that God will provide. God does things. He makes a way in the wilderness when there doesn't seem to be a way. He makes a way in the plains. He makes a way in the ocean. He makes ways. God is the God that makes a way for you as you want to move forward. And I did, and God made a way for me to get that outfit. It was miraculous in my mind, and I give him all the glory to this day for the great things that he has done. I was willing to do a little blood, sweat, and tears and work, and he reached out and did the provision that I needed, and it continues to even be with me this day. Now, these like 40 years later, my grandson wore these to school not long ago, Richard Bradford. So it does a granddad really excitement in my spirit to see Richard get to wear the very things I wore 35 to 40 years ago. I leave you with this word to pause and ponder.